it round the bottom, didn't we?
Yeah.
And
I'm not sure we'll be able to do it, actually. It looks to me a bit more overgrown.
We may have to go through the woods to get up the side.
Barbara Ansell, with her physiotherapist Bobby Jarvis, were medical pioneers at this hospital in Berkshire. For 40 years, the team here saved thousands of children from the ravages of arthritis.
It's got lots of memories. You can feel it coming.
If we walk down to my office, even more.
Yes, that's right.
But it's all so overgrown. Because, see, I used to park my car up here, particularly on Saturday mornings. We worked on Saturdays in those days, and a number of children would come and say, "You're not going home and leaving us." So a few of them, as many as I could get, would sometimes come in the car with me.
Home for a barbecue?
Yeah, well, no, not necessarily
Not
barbecue.
often,
Often, I used to often make them do Angel Delights and things like that themselves, because I believed in teaching them independence, even though they had arthritis.
Taplow Hospital opened in 1947. Then, children with arthritis suffered great and constant pain. They all had terrible difficulty in moving. Arthritis even caused blindness. And some children died. The cause of arthritis remains a mystery, but the devoted team at Taplow revolutionized its treatment.
But it's horrible to see it like this. I loved it here. I mean, we were using it 11 years ago, and it's just gone now.
Taplow was the very first hospital opened in the health service. From the start, it had a special unit on childhood rheumatism. In 1951, a graduate from Birmingham interested in heart disease arrived. Barbara Ansell was to work in the unit on rheumatism, headed by her future champion, Professor Bywaters.
When I went to Taplow, I went to learn about rheumatic heart disease. However, when I got there, I found there were also children with chronic arthritis. And they had joints bent up into the most terrible positions, and yet their spirit was so good in the way they were trying to use these very deformed limbs. And it was really quite pathetic watching them try to make writing possible, walking and so on. And they tried so hard, those kids. My heart used to go out to them. So that's how I got interested in them.
The term arthritis just means inflammation in joints, and it's the lining of the joint that's involved first. The lining, if you look into a normal joint, the lining looks like glistening cling film. It's very shiny and thin. And if you look into a joint with a child with juvenile arthritis, it's much more like sort of wodges of strawberry jelly. It's all inflamed and increased and swollen. And you can imagine if you've got lumps of jelly in your knee instead of cling film, it's not going to move, it's going to hurt, it's going to lose range of movement.
After years of destructive arthritis, teenagers became terribly deformed. With no treatment, muscles wasted away and joints seized up. This woman had arthritis as a child and had not walked for 24 years. For all that time, she had been in a hospital bed.
Was it fixed? Okay, you're off. All right. Which way do you want to go? Which direction? We'll touch everything. Usual way. Okay.
Now, because of treatments pioneered by Barbara Ansell and the team at Taplow in the last 40 years, most children with arthritis escape its horrible effects.
He's got a rather smart bow tie on, hasn't he? He's coming to see me. Oh, he's wound down. So, how's Sebastian been? Fine.
Yep.
And
At 72, she continues her life's work.
yeah, I was going to say I hadn't had a new report.
Sebastian's arthritis started when he was 1.
This is a wind-up one.
Another one.
He doesn't change drugs at all. Nothing. They've changed nothing.
Nothing at all.
Good.
But his knees and that and
Excellent.
ankle, fine.
Good. Anyway, how are you behaving? How's school?
Speak. How's school?
Fine.
Good. And how's the gym going?
She had a way of dealing with children which was extremely pleasant. It wasn't that you didn't feel afraid of her or anything, but nevertheless there was something which was firm about her and decisive about her.
Now, can you sit down and lie down for me like you usually do? Come on. That's a great boy. Could I have your hands, please, Sebastian? Thank you. Can you do that for me with both hands? Oh, that's a very good boy.
To us, she wasn't human. We used to think, like, she doesn't understand what we're going through. She's really hard, and, you know, we just thought she just doesn't understand what we've got to go through. But after a while, once we got to know, we thought, well, she's quite soft, really. She's okay.
Now, I have to get Sebastian to help me here, don't I? You're going to hold on to the tape measure for me? No, I've got to do it all myself today, have I? Oh, Sebastian, you're a mean old thing, aren't you?
You could hear Dr. Ansell's voice from the far end, of the ward, and you could just sense that kind of feeling of people being little, is everything right?
Oh, there we are now. Isn't that a lovely bend in the back? That's great. Now, have you begun? That's very good.
In the late 1940s, the team were the first to realise children must move to prevent deformities and thin-waisted limbs.
Oh, it's amazing to see the pool looking like this.
But the children's pain was too intense for them to move.
Even the steps, we used to struggle up, all the children used to struggle up.
Well, hydrotherapy is very beneficial. Because the water is warm, it helps to relieve the pain. A lot of these children get a lot of pain. And the buoyancy also helps to take the weight of the limb so that they can move a lot freer. And the children loved it. They couldn't wait to get in.
When this child was admitted, her knees and wrists were flexed at right angles. An essential factor of pool treatment is its great psychological importance. The patient knows that she is doing something on her own, and so a spirit of independence is developed.
Hydrotherapy alone did not prevent deformities, because painful inflammation was still there, destroying the children's joints. To stop inflammation, Barbara Ansell needed drugs.
When I began, we had very little in the way of drugs. We had just aspirin, and then cortisone came in the 50s. About 53 we were able to use it, but is a double-edged sword because the side effects are quite severe. If you gave too much, the children became grossly fat and their bones became thin. The children didn't grow. They got very mooned faces, and they were at risk for infections because we damped their whole immune system down. Trying to get the right dose to control the disease and not give the child side effects was very, very difficult.
Good. And bend them up.
So in the late 60s, they developed and continually assessed new tough regimes, treading a tightrope between drug side effects and pain and deformity. Barbara Ansell gave patients less steroids and made them work more.
Come on, right out. On, stretch, stretch, stretch. Come on, Penny, that right one isn't straight.
When I think back to it, it was quite a severe physiotherapy regime. I mean, after breakfast there was your first physiotherapy session, and then you came back and you had school and so on, and then there was lunch, and then there was, as it were, the main physiotherapy session after rest hour, when you went down to the hydrotherapy pool and so on. And these were quite, it was quite a rigorous workout, if you like.
On, stretch, stretch, stretch. Come on, Penny, that right one isn't straight.
Keep lifting, keep lifting. And hold it up there for me now. Keep it up there, don't let it drop. Keep it there, keep it there, keep it there, keep it there.
Part of the treatment was essential that they did their exercises and they really gritted their teeth and got on with things. And a kinder person might have allowed, so, well, don't do your exercise, take the afternoon off, rest on your bed, and the results would have been disastrous. They'd have stiffened up, the disease would have been worse. So I think she was being hard to be kind, really, and I think we've all acknowledged that.
I used to come up here a lot because I watched to see the children. I didn't go in with them, but I stood where you're standing now and watched them doing their exercises. And I particularly watched them coming down ordinary steps. And I have many happy memories of children getting up to the top here and saying, "Did you see what I did?" And then they would stand at the top of the steps and expect a hug to compensate for all the work they'd done.
They managed, in a relatively short time, to get me off steroids altogether, with the result that I was able to grow and so on. And also, I mean, to all intents and purposes, I was able to go about a normal life. I was able to go to school and so on. I mean, it was a complete transformation.
Even so, David Noakes was to spend another 18 months in Taplow. He was one of the lucky children. The unlucky ones were in other hospitals, bent and stiff, in wheelchairs and beds.
You can hardly see, because of the green foliage, this long, long corridor which the children from the wards down here had to cycle up on little tricycles to improve their muscles. Many of the local population got terrified of the children on tricycles on the main corridor at Taplow.
It was to keep our knees going, and just because it was a long corridor. It's just way, if we actually walk there, we wouldn't want to do it, we would stop halfway. But because we were actually on bikes, it was more fun going up and down, so you didn't realise you're actually exercising at the same time.
In 1972, the Taplow team made a new breakthrough. They discovered how to prevent arthritis causing blindness. The eyes of just one group were affected. They gradually lost their sight because a white oblique band grew across the eye and a cataract obscured the lens. At first, only the surgeons at Taplow could help these children.
Patients came to us as for practical purposes blind because of the cataract and the opacity. One I remember very well, Barry, with two knees that were a problem as well. They needed surgery because they were bent up, but he had his cataracts and his bands removed and went to Brighton Art College and ended up as an interior designer.
I've been on an aeroplane with my dad.
Sebastian's eyes are at risk.
Did you enjoy it?
Now, Barbara Ansell and eye specialists diagnose early and use drugs, so surgery is seldom necessary.
Nor am I.
Many Taplow advances were made by experts visiting from all over the world. By the 1970s, it was renowned for research and testing of new treatments.
It was a very well-disciplined unit, and of course the discipline came from her own leadership because she was such a hard worker herself.
I mean, one of the things that really used to bug us was, you know, we'd sort of start at 8 in the morning, finish at 6, no break for lunch, coffee, whatever, and at 6 she'd say, "Off you all go, I'm going to do some real work now."
One of her house physicians arrived rather late, breathless, and he was sorry he was late, as he didn't get to bed till 3 o'clock in the morning. And Dr. Ansell looked at him with a stony glare, obviously not accepting this as an excuse. And she said to him, "When I was your age, I didn't go to bed." And that completely disarmed him. He crept to the back of the crowd.
I bully everyone, yes, I accept that.
It took a tough manager to create and maintain a medical regime for this complicated and incurable disease. As in all hospitals, parents were virtually excluded, so young children lost their comfort and support.
Laura has never been in a place like this. She asks, "What's that girl in bed for?"
In 1952, James Robertson made this influential film to open the eyes of doctors and nurses to the plight of young children.
When her mother comes in, Laura begins sobbing.
After many years of his work, parents were welcomed, and now it is health service policy. But Taplow was slow to change. Because children came from all over Britain, parents were allowed only 2 hours a week.
Mummy's going now. Look, you can see my bus from the window. Wave to Mummy.
I was an inpatient for about 4 years, so it's a long time. When I actually started getting a bit mobile, I was allowed home weekends. My family became strangers, actually, because Taplow was my life in a way. They were my family. I felt more at home there than I did in my own home.
I'm sure it wasn't really good for them to be so restricted away from their family. But we tried to make up for it in many ways. We had guide groups working in the hospital, scouts. We had lots and lots of friendly help from many people around Taplow. But obviously, if a child is away from home, it's rather like a boarding school, really.
And many of us at Taplow had not got children. We actually became very, very attached to the patients. And they were not patients. They were our children, our friends.
We had beautiful day rooms at the end of the wards. This was Ward 2, the children's ward, and I have lovely photographs of all the sort of things that went on in that ward, but you could look at it today, you can't believe it's true.
Unfortunately, Dr. Ansell doesn't feel that she can come in to the ward. She remembers all the happy times we had in here. We had some fantastic parties, and I think that's what this ward was all about. With all these, you can see all the murals around the wall. We had lots of happy times as well as the sad times, and there were some of those as well. Just remembering the little girl that was in that room who unfortunately died. She didn't have juvenile arthritis, but I can remember her saying to me, "Goodbye," just before I went home. And she's still there.
In 1966, Barbara Ansell's team assessed a new treatment that promised a breakthrough. Patients were dying from a rare complication, amyloidosis, causing kidney failure.
I didn't know that I had it. I mean, I wasn't aware of any change. I mean, because what I was aware of were as it were the physical manifestations of a serious flare, renewed activity at the time, you know, pains and so on, swellings, inability to move joints and so on. I wasn't, you know, as it were, what's going on inside you don't know about.
They were using at Taplow a drug called chlorambucil for other things, I think. And she thought that this was a potent drug which would damp down the inflammation. And if you damp down the inflammation, you turn off the amyloid. I think they knew that from tuberculosis studies. So she started to use chlorambucil.
It's not a nice drug to use, and one does not rush to use it, because as with all cell-killing drugs, it can damage good cells as well as bad cells, and there is a slight risk of leukemia as a sequel to therapy. However, it has had a remarkable effect on the inflammation in the children, and from a practical point of view has been one of the major therapeutic advances in the treatment of amyloidosis.
As children, maybe there was more that one could have known or been told, but I think on the whole everybody at Taplow behaves responsibly in the way that they evaluate the drugs that they use.
we were aware that we might sterilise some of these youngsters. But against that, their life expectancy without treatment was going to be about 4 or 5 years. So indeed, some of these youngsters have married and haven't been able to have children, which is obviously unfortunate. But against that, they probably wouldn't be around today.
Now, doctors rarely face dilemmas about informing young patients of sterility, because amyloidosis itself has virtually disappeared. Barbara Ansell was not only concerned with her children's health.
She was very keen that they had a good education. We had a good school at Taplow. And when we actually looked at how well these youngsters had done, we were amazed. More than a third of them had had tertiary education. You know, they'd gone to college or university. So they had been really high achievers. And I think what she most wanted to do for them was to persuade them that a disability shouldn't be a handicap.
I'd like to think that I've written some books which have been quite successful, mainly biographies. And I've also done quite a bit of work for television, classic serial dramas. I don't think that I would be doing what I am doing now had it not been for Dr. Ansell's treatment, not just of my illness, but of my life and my opportunities.
At my worst, I couldn't brush my hair. Couldn't do that at all. My mum had to do that. I couldn't wash. To have help with washing, dressing. I needed help to get up from things, turn over at night. Basically everything. It just seemed such a task to do. I just couldn't do it. I was in so much pain, I couldn't do that.
Although most youngsters with juvenile arthritis do grow up with their disease burnt out, lead normal lives with just very minimal disability, there is a significant proportion who have a lot of disability.
Andrula, how lovely to see you. I'm fine. How are you?
Very well, thank you.
And you had a wonderful holiday?
Yes, very
You're
nice.
driving. It's the first time I've ever seen you driving.
Yeah.
Hello, Paul.
I mean, we've got a 4-joint club. This is youngsters who've had 2 hips and 2 knees replaced. Andrula is a member of that 4-joint club.
Both of you like apple juice. Okay. Well, I got them in boxes. I thought they'd make less mess that way, to be honest.
If you
Look at this one. His one leg is longer than the other. He was made in the OT department.
was he?
I don't think you knew Mandy made him. And she left him with me because his leg was wrong shape. So he's called Blue Eyes because he's got blue eyes.
Gorgeous. Yeah.
Put him by you again. Anyway, how are you managing now, Andrula?
Very well, very well. I'm really well now. I'm actually getting
Generally
about.
well.
Generally
yes.
well.
And the
yes.
last surgery was successful, I
Oh
understand.
yes, yes.
So you can
got a nice straight knee now, so I can actually get around a little bit better now.
Yes, but you can't manage stairs too well.
I can do them if there's not too many. I'm getting about.
In the 1960s, she and surgeon George Arden wanted to replace hips in wheelchair patients like Andrula so they could walk.
You had a situation where the joint was worn, nothing else could be done. Well, the next option might be to replace it. And I think it's thanks to her and her persuasion. In fact, I think the surgeons were perhaps more reluctant to operate than she thought, and twisting our arms that drove us forward at the time. And this is taking back 30 years ago. This new operation was only being offered to patients who were 65 years old. There was new technology, there were new materials, so there was a little apprehension about how long these would last. If they didn't work out in the long run, we weren't disabling younger people with the problem.
No one ever puts a hip into a child until the bones are so destroyed there is no way that hip could recover. But this occasionally happens in children with very small hips still. And then we have to have the hips made to measure. It's very expensive, up to a couple of £1,000 each.
This joint has been made specially for a child of about 11 years old. She was still growing, and you can see how very small that is. It just squeaked home inside her bone. And It is also very carefully shaped with a slight bend on it, because we found on measurement that the upper part of her femur, the thigh bone, was bent, and a conventional straight prosthesis would not have gone in it. At least it would have gone in, would have come out through the side. And to match that is a very, very small socket.
I was 11 when I actually had my first hip done. But the best thing is when I actually walked on it first time. I remember that the physios actually got me up, and instead of my leg going forward, it went out to the side. That's probably because of the muscles and so forth. But I was waiting for pain. I was waiting for it to be really painful, but it was pain-free, it felt wonderful actually for the first time for my hip to be pain-free.
In 1985, Taplow closed. After 30 years, Barbara Ansell left the centre of her life. She moved to head a major clinical research team in West London. Here, she worked to prevent the harmful long-term separation of children from parents.
I hope she's getting to know us well, sister. And we're going to get the extra blood we need for the typing and things when she goes to surgery.
For the last 10 years of working life, she went around the country setting up regional units. And she used to do that at the weekend. I mean, she would set off on a Saturday morning for Darlington or Edinburgh or wherever, do a clinic, do a teaching session in the afternoon, and then come home. And it's completely due to her that there are these regional centres now functioning very well throughout the country. So no child needs to be 300 miles from home.
No, but you have to have lots of energy to be a woman in medicine. That's all the things I used to look for in my staff, was if they got energy. I've always had a lot of energy. I still have as much as most people.
Can you do it yourself? See if you can make a circle in the pool.
Bobby Jarvis and Barbara Ansell's achievements enabled Sebastian to live at home. His family maintain his normal growth with constant therapy and drugs.
Good, you've been working on that. And up.
Regular checkups protect his eyes.
Push down hard.
His chances of a normal life have been transformed compared to a child with arthritis 50 years ago.
One of the things that was distinctive about the way that Dr. Ansell approached the treatment was trying to give the individuals that she's treating the best possible quality of life for the rest of their lives.
She looked at us, I think we were her children. She often used to say to us that we were her children, we were her special children.